silence to honor the life of Walter Wallace, a young man that was killed by police in Philadelphia today or this evening or yesterday evening, but also for all other victims of state-sanctioned violence. So if we could just take a moment. Okay, thank you for doing that. So as we get started, I am going to just kick us off and get us started with a little bit of history and information about Law for Black Lives and the work that we do. And then I will kick it off to my colleagues after I give us an overview of what to expect from the evening and how to best enjoy your time here. Next slide, thank you. So Law for Black Lives is a national community of radical lawyers and legal workers and law students committed to transforming the law and building the power of organizing to defend, protect, and advance Black liberation across the globe. Next slide, please. We were founded in 2015 after the uprisings in Ferguson, Baltimore, and New York. A couple thousand lawyers and legal workers came together and decided to use their skills to build the power of movement. Today, through the coordination of legal support and training and mentorship, research, political education, policy, and popular education tools, we're building a legal infrastructure that is responsive, action-oriented, and collaborative. Our work is guided by both our values, is guided by our values, and it is shaped by our theory of change, which centers on transforming the law, transforming the legal field, and most importantly, supporting base-building organizations. We're committed to providing the needed legal support and policy research to movement organizations, following the lead of the Movement for Black Lives Policy Table and other close partners. We've prioritized issues like bail reform, decriminalization, land cooperatives, reparations, and invest, divest, thereby transforming the law. We're also fostering a community of movement lawyers, legal workers, and law students who are committed to practicing the law in ways that build the power and sustainability of movement. We're excited to be training a new generation of lawyers in the politics and practices of movement lawyering. And finally, we believe that transformative change only happens through effective organizing and power building. And as a result, the majority of our work is focused on how we can support local base building groups to build the power, to build power and to transform the conditions of their communities. Over the past 5 years, we've expanded our organization's membership to reach 6,000 radical lawyers, legal workers, and law students in 50 states across the country. So that's a little bit about us. Let me give you a little bit of an overview of what to expect from this evening. I'm gonna turn it over to my colleagues to talk about the fellowship and our incredible fellows and the work that they do. You'll hear more about that work in our 3 mini panels, which will explore more deeply some topics around invest, divest, and particularly the work they're doing in the field and what they're doing to change their communities. And then we'll have a closing. We'll take questions at the end of every panel and then again at the end of all 3 panels. We do encourage you to use the chat box to comment, to agree or disagree, to interact with one another. So please do that throughout the panel. We'll be monitoring the chat. We'll lift up anything that we think should be lifted up. But more importantly, if you have questions, you'll want to pose them towards the end of the panel by using the Q&A box. If you use the Q&A box, we'll ask your question. If you don't, we might not, especially if the chat is active, we may not be able to see it. So pose your questions with the Q&A section or with the Q&A button so that we can lift them up. And everything that you'll hear about here, the recording, any information or resources, including a list of resources curated by our fellows, will be available on our website. And you'll get the address at the end. You can visit our website for more information, contact us, join our mailing list, and follow us on social media. So with that said, I will kick it over to Margaret.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Amika, and thank y'all for joining us. We really are honored and incredibly excited. We have a phenomenal class and cohort of fellows who have joined us for over a year and really allowed us to be kind of passengers on the journey of their incredible local walk. And so we are beyond thrilled. As Amika said, we were hoping to do this in person, so we are not doing that, but we're beyond thrilled to be together in this space and to really just highlight and uplift the incredible work happening and the ways we are winning, but also to derive some lessons from that work. So my name is Margaret. I use she and her pronouns. I'm the executive director of Law for Black Lives and super honored to be here and appreciate all of y'all joining us on this beautiful Tuesday evening. So as Amika mentioned, two of kind of our primary foundational goals at L4BL is number one, to transform laws and also to transform the legal field. And we see our fellowships as manifesting both of those goals. It allows us to really go deep with a group of lawyers, legal workers, and organizers, and to train up a cadre of legal workers in the practice of movement lawyering. And so we see that as being concerned with and obsessed with building the power of communities most impacted and making transformative change both inside the legal field and beyond. And so the fellowship's a chance for us to do that and also to support local work. This is our second year doing a fellowship. Our first fellowship was in 2017 and 18 with Movement Law Lab and was a chance for us to really incubate small movement lawyering shops from across the country. So when it came time for us to plan our next fellowship, all of us were really clear that we wanted to do an issue-based fellowship. And we knew that Invest, Divest, or Divest, Invest was going to be our focus. And that's because Divest, Invest has really been a focus of L4BL since our inception and before. We understand Divest, Invest as key to any policy fight that there is or that we could have because it gets to the root of the problem. Next slide. So we've been training and working in Invest Divest since our inception, as I mentioned. We've trained over 50 groups via our Freedom Labs. And so these are small cohorts of folks who we train in the basic kind of budget skills and the politics of Invest Divest, which we see as abolitionist in nature. We also have worked with over 20 partner groups, including some of our fellows, to provide technical assistance on the ground to really move Invest Divest fights, which might look like bail fights, they might look like jail fights, they might look like all sorts of things, education fights, but really they're about fundamentally shifting the way that budgets are made and what we actually invest in. We also have created resources that thousands of folks have looked at and used and engaged, including our Freedom to Thrive, and that is on our website. Next slide. So when we say divest, invest, what we mean by that is we're calling for a divestment of resources from the systems and the structures that harm our communities. This includes jails, this includes prisons, it includes police. It's part of the defund movement and beyond. And we're also simultaneously calling for an investment in the structures, systems, infrastructures, and programs that strengthen and support our communities. We understand budgets as ethical or moral documents that really showcase who and what cities, states, and the national government cares about. And if you look at our budgets today, what is clear is that we live in a country that's incredibly anti-Black, that invests more in the surveillance, occupation, policing, and caging of Black and brown folks than they do in our education, in our employment, or in our housing. And so we see taking on city, state, and national budgets as a way to really get at the root of the problems that our communities face and to start to really question both how decisions are made, but what decisions are made. And so the numbers are really clear for us in terms of what it is that this country and our governments value. There's over $100 billion spent every single year on policing alone. Over $80 billion is spent to incarcerate and cage our people. And most of the folks who are incarcerated incarcerated and caged are Black and brown folks and Latinx and Black folks. And these numbers are really stark to us because we also know that many of our people are in situations where they can't afford housing, where they're not getting the education that they deserve and need, where they can't get transportation to their jobs, they can't get childcare or healthcare. And so we realize that when all governments choose to invest money inside of policing and inside of cages, instead of investing in our children, our education, and our futures, that it's a really clear choice. And so we really see this invest, divest mantle as being inherited by the folks who came before us. There has been literally decades of work, whether it's cages, not cops, or whether it's counselors, not cops, rather, or books, not bars. There's a long history of critical resistance and youth groups across the country who have fought for invest, divest strategies. But we actually kind of originate the invest, divest strategy even before that. We can see the traces of this in MLK's Vietnam speech, where he calls for a defunding of the militarization of this country and an investment in under-resourced communities. And so we see ourselves in a long, long line, and we inherit all of those fights to think about what are the kind of root causes of the problems our communities face and how do we address them in ways that aren't just symptomatic. And we really also understand the defund fight as coming out of the incredible work and the soil that's been tilled by folks like our fellows who've been fighting across the country now for years and decades to really begin to have these conversations about budgets as ethical documents, to think about what we invest in and what actually keeps us safe. And so we're really proud to be among the folks who have been carrying the mantle of this work before this summer, but also through this year. Next slide. So one way that we knew how to manifest our investments and our belief in the invest divest model was to have a fellowship around it. And so we were really excited to do this. We had hundreds, literally, I think 100 applications of folks who applied for this fellowship. There was a lot of energy across the country and groundswell for folks who are, number one, trying to divest from these systems that harm us and trying to think of new ways to invest in our people. And so we had a call for applications. We picked 12 incredible projects. There were 18 fellows. Many of our fellows are paired up with a lawyer or a legal worker and an organizer. And that's because of our theory of change is that it's between, it's the cooperation and the building between movement and legal infrastructure that we actually see sustainable change. And so we've been incredibly lucky and blessed to have these collaborative projects. We have a total of 18 fellows this year. We have at L4BL invested $100,000 in these fellows in the form both of grants, but also in TA retreats and other engagements. And all of our fellows are people of color. 50 plus of our fellows are Black or are women. And so we are incredibly proud of this class. They're working across the country and locally to really enact and manifest change. Next slide. Our fellowships provide kind of 4 key areas of support. So one is technical assistance or support. We connected fellows with experts who provided individualized support around local budgets to really help them in their fights. We also provided financial support to our fellows, as well as learning labs. And so we had monthly labs for about 8 months in which fellows learned and dug deep into different skill sets, as well as different political ideologies, because we really deeply in buttressing ourselves, both with clear skills, but as Amika said, also with a clear set of values. And lastly, we had an incredible retreat where the fellows really built a community of learning around the work that they're doing. We think we're only as strong as our relationships. And so we have been incredibly blessed to have a group of fellows who have been in deep and loving relationship and have supported each other's growth as this movement and this moment has really blossomed. And then we've seen that over the summer. And I'm going to pass it to Kim to really talk us through our incredible fellows and just introduce them to you briefly before we dive into the panels.
Great. Thank you so much, Marbury. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Kim. I'm the operations director here at Law for Black Lives, and my pronouns are she, her, and Aya. And I feel very honored and privileged to have spent the last 8 months in community with all of our fellows. So I'm going to quickly introduce them. Also just want to note the slides that you'll see are part of a brochure that we've put together that's also available on our website if you want to read them more in depthly. And then the fellows themselves will go more in depth in their work as we continue on tonight. So first we have Jill Cartwright and Tiffany Williams-Roberts from Atlanta who are supporting ongoing work to close down the jail in Atlanta. Leslie Turner, who's working in Las Vegas, Nevada to implement comprehensive bail reform and free Black mamas. Maya Ragsdale, Zaina Osus, and Ahmed Mori are working in Miami around shifting the city budget away from punitive spending. Tiffany Russell Moyer works in Sacramento, fighting for disability justice and decriminalization. Aaron Miles Cloud and Joyce McMillan, both based in New York, work at the intersections of the criminal legal system and the child welfare system. Andrew Hairston and Tyler Wittenberg, based in Texas and North Carolina, respectively, are working to get cops out of schools and end the school to prison pipeline. Wesley Dozier is working in Memphis, Tennessee on implementing participatory budgeting. Nzinga Hooker lives in Baltimore and is building worker cooperatives towards more just economies. James Birch lives in Oakland and is working to create mental health supports and non-carceral interventions. Nora Smith, who also lives in the Bay Area, is a transformative justice practitioner. And lastly, Rashad Booney and Danielle Dillard, who weren't able to join us tonight, are our fellows who were based in Detroit, and they were also working on a Divest Invest campaign there. So we're gonna go ahead and pass it back to Marbury, who will be talking to our fellows about defunding the criminal legal system.
Thank you so much. So I'm super pumped for this first panel. We kind of wanted y'all to go on a journey from defunding the criminal legal system to more generally defund to then what do we do next, right? So life after defund. So I'm super excited to invite our panelists. If folks want to come off of the camera or come onto the camera rather, so we can see y'all. You're also known as everyone's looking fly as can be. So thank you for that. They stay fly. I want to just remind folks of a few things. One is we are a call and response kind of people. And so we really do welcome folks' comments and thoughts in the chat box. I see some of that happening already and really appreciate that. So keep that up. It's a place for us to really be in conversation. We also will have some time for Q&A, but that will happen through the Q&A button. So please feel free to ask any questions. And I'm going to just go ahead and dig in. So I'm going to start by having, we really wanted to have this kind of be an interactive experience, have each of our fellows introduce themselves to answer some questions and kind of ground us in their work and who they are and why they do this. So I'm going to start with just throwing it to them to do that really quickly for us. And I'm going to actually start with Leslie to begin us off before I even start the questions. Hi, Leslie.
Hi. Hey, everybody. My name is Leslie Turner, Las Vegas, Nevada. My pronouns are she, her. And so my people are Black mamas and people that grew up in the crack era, formerly incarcerated people, advocates, activists, organizers, Black spiritual healers and Black spiritual fiduciaries, Black college dropouts, gangsters, lowrider drivers, hitting corners on Crenshaw. My people were weed runners and still weed smokers, the descendants of the ancestors that fled the South, children of parents who were revolutionary in their time, artists, karaoke singers, dice throwers, hustlers, and medicine makers. And then should I just go into the question now? Okay, so that's me, those are my people. And then for the question, what should we invest in to make our communities safer? I definitely think that we should invest in Black history and knowledge of self, understanding of how our culture is literally and figuratively in our DNA and often without our knowing. Invest in natural healing resources and learning, invest in healing. I think I keep saying healing, so that must resonate with me because, you know, invest in families, and that looks like income for families. Invest in food sovereignty and land acquisition, and invest in travel for Black people to build alliances and connections with our brothers and sisters throughout the diaspora. And then obviously, lastly, invest in reparations, which, yes, is real dollars. So that's it.
Yes, thank you so much, Leslie. Leslie always be bringing the fire. And I did a whole job of introducing this section because one of the questions we asked the fellows to answer, which Leslie just answered in the ways that made me actually want to cry, so thank you, Leslie, is who are your people? And this is a question that I think we started our first call with our fellows with this question, and literally the staff of FBO was like falling out in tears. And we were like, how did we get so lucky with this magic? But the question really comes from Ella Baker, who used to ask folks who their people were. And it's meant to be both an invitation to disclose something about yourself and where you come from, but also it's an accountability mechanism of who are you actually accountable to? Who is it that holds you? Who is it that made you? who is it that molds you? And so I just want to thank Leslie for that incredibly honest answer. And we also wanted to have each fellow begin with what it is that we should be investing in, because so often we have these conversations that are really based in defund, but they are as much about what we are defunding as what we are funding. And all of us are in this fight, not just to dismantle, but to create. So I want to thank you, Leslie, for starting us off with absolutely no grounding for the audience, but you made that magic. So I appreciate you so much. And so grateful for your book. And I'm going to pass it next to Zaina.
Thanks so much, Marbury. Thank you, Leslie. Thanks for everyone who's tuning in and joining us today. I know it's a really hard and complicated time, so just thank you for your time. My name is Zaina Al-Sus. I use she and they pronouns, and I currently live in Miami, Florida. My people are Southern and migrant and militant and working class and fighting within, outside, and beyond cages to live in their full dignity. My people are invested in long-term transformative organizing strategies towards building a society that no longer relies on cruelty, extraction, and punishment. And I just wanted to say we would be safer and stronger if we invested in the needs of people in our communities, in particular living wage jobs, childcare, healthcare, trauma healing, housing, space for play and space for rest, ecological sustenance and care instead of jails and policing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Zaina. And Zaina was repping, and everyone will speak for both Maya and Ahmed, who were part of the project in Miami that we will learn more about. I'm going to pass it next to Tiffany to tell us who your people are and what we should be investing in.
Is that me, Tiffany? Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to be here. This is such a beautiful group of people. My name is Tiffany Rosa-Moyer. My pronouns are she, hers, and I'm located in Sacramento, California. My people are those who lead and move with love for their communities, people who cultivate spaces where everyone feels like they belong and where people feel safe. My people are healers, dreamers, and lovers. And most importantly, they believe that all of these rules and laws that we use to navigate life are made up, and that all of it can be deconstructed and remade in a way that provides access to joy for all Black people. And those are my people. I believe that we would be stronger and safer if we invested in each other. If we slowed down just enough to listen to what our people need to flourish in their body and mind, and if we then reshaped our financial, political, and economic structures to prioritize meeting our unique but simple needs like food and access. And I emphasize access because practicing disability justice has revolutionized how I approach liberation work and the motivation for the project that I brought for this fellowship. Thanks, Marbury.
Thank you, Tiffany. Oh, y'all, so juicy. And so it's just so beautiful and so good. Next, I'm going to pass it to either Tiffany or Jill. I'm not sure which of y'all are going to hold us through this, but I'll let you decide. Oh, Jill, we can't hear you.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. Zoom is still winning, obviously. So I'm Jill, and I'm so grateful to be in this space, this virtual space with all the other Law for Black Lives fellows, and especially just really honored to be working with the legendary Tiffany Williams Roberts. And so my people are Black people and those who affirm and love Black people. My people are Black aunties, my people are church folk, my people are also Aries placements and generally fire signs. I also come from country folk and small town people. So anyone who relates to the switch in your internal clock from coming from the country to the city, those are my people. And also my people are land stewards and water babies. And I believe that we should invest in Black families primarily. I also believe that it's important for our movements to invest in Black intergenerational intimacy and legacy, and understanding that we need each other across lines of age and being able to build that intimacy between youth and elders.
Thank you so much, Jill. So I'm incredibly excited to be in conversation with y'all around really kind of originating this defund moment inside the criminal legal system and thinking about why that's an important side of struggle. So I'm going to actually start with Jill and Tiffany. And Tiffany, we have all the Tiffanys, which is an honor, to talk a bit about your work, but also why is it so important that we defund the criminal legal system beyond just police? What is the call and why is it important?
I guess I'll go first. Or are you speaking, Jill? I can't tell. Okay. So we're taught that the legal system is a place to reduce harm and thereby create safety. But in my personal and professional experience, it instead both creates and exacerbates harm. The criminal legal system has evolved to use punishment and violence as a means to control bodies, with its origins in the enslavement of my ancestors, and currently functions to further enslave both my family and neighbors today. And we've normalized the violence of policing and caging people to the detriment of our collective wellness. And it's been time to pivot to change direction and to instead invest in resources that promote wellness, joy, agency, and dignity.
Thank you so much for that, Tiffany. And curious, Jill and Tiffany, why y'all have also kind of located your struggle in defunding this system.
So, hey y'all, thank you for having us and for being here with us. There are three reasons that I think that it's really important to talk about deconstructing and dismantling the criminal legal system and all of the systems that contribute to it. First, it's because it is so often the first resort for anyone in a position of power that wants to solve a problem that can be attributed to or that is assigned to Black folks. It is a system that pathologizes us in a way that says that we are more likely to harm others, that we are more likely to even harm ourselves. And because we've internalized that narrative, it is so difficult with these systems in place to convince decision makers that there's another way. The second reason is because this system is self-sustaining and adaptable, meaning that no matter what we tinker with, there's always something to take up the slack. An example in Atlanta is bail reform, right? They give with one hand, they take with the other. Right now, before a historic election, our city officials are figuring out how to give police more power, how to expand arrest powers, how to throw more people in jail because the rich folks are upset about the sound of muscle cars in their neighborhoods, right? And so this summer they're marching with us, and this fall they're looking for ways to jail our children and our cousins and our brothers and our sisters. And then the third reason is because the system is harmful, just as Tiffany had said. The problems that we see, even as lawyers, many of us would like to work ourselves out of jobs. We don't believe that we should be essential workers. We dream a world, we imagine a world where it's not necessary to allocate these sorts of resources for us to constantly be doing harm reduction. Instead, we want to build better futures and build liberated children and have progeny that can enjoy a world that we never were able to experience. And we think there are things that we can do to dismantle these systems so that we can enjoy some of the fruits of our labor in our lifetime.
Ashe, thank you so much for that, Tiffany. So I want to ask Leslie and also the Miami crew, both of y'all's projects really center on the criminal legal system as well. And so would love to hear just a brief description of the work you guys are doing, but also why is that the side of struggle that you've chosen? And I'll start with Leslie. Oh, you're on mute. There you
go. So here in Las Vegas, I think collaboration project, but I think one of the key things is bailing out Black mothers. And I think that is an important side of struggle because I'm a Black mother. So it's like, it resonates with me, obviously, because I can relate. You know, I was incarcerated when my son was 4 months old. And just the lasting impact that had on me and him, I think just makes it even more at the forefront of all of the work that I do. And when we do these bailouts, when we're bailing out Black mothers, it is a tactic to kind of like highlight the injustice. And at the same time, it's kind of like a mutual aid to really just like get our people out of a cage right now so that they can be home with their families, so they can keep their job, keep a roof over their head, et cetera. And so at the same time that we're doing these tactics, we're also doing, doing policy advocacy, writing bills, and trying to get legislation passed. So it goes hand in hand, but I think mutual aid in the form of bailouts, and then also participatory defense. When we're bailing people out, we're not just bailing them out and saying, okay, good luck. We're also helping them with their work on their cases, trying to help them gain some type of stability, whatever that may look like, really funneling resources into people so that they can have a cushion to be able to just, rest, to be able to think about what their next move is, to be able to envision a better future for their lives. So I think those are the two kind of key things that we're doing right now as far as Divest Invest goes in Las Vegas.
Thank you for that, because I think you also just touched on an array of tactics that feel so important to name. And so this kind of mutual aid tactic, and we have to get in the trenches with our people and be with them and walk with them. But also that you're doing organizing and policy. And so just how important I think that kind of trifecta is, that we are with our people, we're bringing them in, and then we're making structural change, and how those things all happen at the same time in Las Vegas and Nevada, because of the work you're doing. I want to turn it now to the Miami crew, that's what we call y'all, to share with us kind of what is the work y'all are doing and why this side of struggle, like what is possible.
Yeah, so thanks again for having us. It's been an honor. So in 2019, Miami Dream Defenders launched a Free the Block campaign, which has really evolved to encompass two major components. And the first one is the No New Jails campaign, right? There's a 61-year-old jail in Miami, pretrial detention center, that's been under consent decree with the DOJ for atrocious conditions. And the county wants to close it because it presents a liability issue. But in its place, it wants to build a $412 million new jail complex. And so that sort of became a site of struggle. One, because so many of the folks involved in the campaign, myself included, have been touched by the carceral system. So many people we know, like I myself grew up with an incarcerated father. But beyond that, it's with this kind of building of a new jail like that, it became an important moment to find the tools and tactics and the mobilization and the organizing to resist, right? To resist the building of this new complex. So Miami Dream Defenders has been advocating that the county close pretrial detention center, as the county intends to do again, but instead of replacing it with a new jail, is shutting the jail down through decarceration and reinvesting the operational costs of the jail into services that continue to promote decarceration. And then, the campaign also evolved to include another component, which is it's really a defund police campaign during the budget fights this year. This was an intense amount of county budget advocacy done in tandem with a coalition of Miami-based community groups. This became like a really kind of like front and center when the county released its proposed budget for fiscal year 2021. That showed that while the county actually increased the police budget, in light of revenue shortfalls for the next few years, in light of divestment of services for like unincorporated areas, and in light of stagnation of other county services, that something really needed to be done. So consistent with the No New Jails demands, Miami Dream Defenders demands included a $75 million divestment from the Miami-Dade Police Department budget that should be invested into initiatives that decrease the jail population as well. That included, sobering centers, that would reduce the number of folks that are of admissions into the jail and the hospital systems for things like public intoxication. It included creating an alternatives to incarceration work group as part of the proposal that would make recommendations on how to continue to lower the jail population, creating grants programs for organizations doing reentry work, where in Miami there's very little private sector funding and public sector funding, frankly, for these kinds of organizations. And generally like massive infusions of cash into rent forgiveness for folks impacted by the pandemic, to prevent expected increase in houselessness and other things that further feed the carceral system. And so that's where we stand today.
That's amazing. And y'all are going to have to get your Google fingers out, because all of these campaigns are things y'all are going to want to Google and learn more about. Dream Defenders out of Miami, who's doing incredible, life-changing, system-changing work. So check out all of our people. I want to ask kind of one more question before we get into, I think, a fun ending piece. But the question is around kind of what the victories are. And so both Leslie and Ahmed, you both touched on how personal these fights are, that there's no way that many of us engage in these fights because of personal experience. And so losses are hard, but that means victories are also sweet. And I think that very often we do this work without remembering what the wins are. And so I want y'all just to ground us, and this is for every project, to ground us in a recent victory, and what's a lesson you learned. And I think that this is really kind of the inspiration for this webinar, is that y'all have been doing this defund work for years, sometimes for decades, not to age ourselves, but it's been a long time that some of us have been in this fight. And so really want to think about what are some of the lessons that you've learned that you want folks who are just now engaging in these conversations to know, to think about as they move forward. So I'm going to start with Tiffany and Jill to talk us through kind of what's a win and what's a lesson.
I think one win in Atlanta has been a community organizing campaign from like 2013 becoming a funded a law enforcement alternative response project, right? And so we know that in the meantime, while we're doing harm reduction, we have to shrink the size of the state in our communities. We have to end and shrink occupations in our communities. And so what began as a campaign against banning sex workers from the city has now become Atlanta Fulton County Pre-Arrest Diversion Program. And we're now at the point where law enforcement has been extracted from that process so that people can receive the care that they need when they're in crisis. And that, despite any public officials that would take credit for that, that is a win of the people. That's a win of organizers who are willing to meet in basements and living rooms and parks with no recognition, right, and with no respect. And so I think that is a win despite the climate of our city right now. And then I think one lesson has been that representation in the way of race in places like Atlanta doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in the ways that people would expect. It doesn't matter that our leadership is Black. It doesn't matter if it's the police chief or the mayor or the city council. If the politic is still anti-Black, right? And if the behavior still is a manifestation of internalized racism, the same harm is visited upon us. And sometimes it's even worse because when we bring it up, we're brushed to the side because these people grace the covers of magazines and the front pages of newspapers and they're held up as being emblems of progressive values and liberation, when in fact they're the same people who are subjecting us to such harm. And so I think one lesson learned in Atlanta is that, yes, we must build together. Yes, we must forgive one another. Yes, we must be willing to learn and change and shift. But accountability means standing up to the people with whom you have social relationships, especially the Black elite, or we will continue to sort of undo all of the progress that we think we have found in this city.
Go ahead. She said that skin folk aren't always kinfolk. Thank you for that, Tiffany. Tiffany with an I.
So if you don't mind, I would like to share the win when I share a photo of the project.
Absolutely. Do you want to share a lesson?
I will absolutely share a lesson. And the lesson that I've taken specifically in this last year is how important it is to build each other up before moving forward. The work to defund powerful structures and instead invest in communities and in people is incredibly difficult and can even be dangerous given some of the retaliatory nature of the government and other powerful structures. And the trauma is real, both vicarious and secondary, and also the trauma you experience yourself. And the ways in which the power structures are self-sustaining is by exhausting us and trying to extinguish our energy and passion for reimagining a world without harms through white supremacy and racial capitalism. So experiencing the ways in which the people I work with in Sacramento really pour into each other, really pour a lot of love into each other. And seeing how that has sustained the work is an incredible lesson that I've taken over the year, and one that has honestly just brought me a lot of joy.
I love that. Love sustains the work. Thank you for that, Tiffany. I'm going to go to Maya.
Hey, everybody. I would say there's been so many lessons that have come out of this work. And I think that there's also been, there's been some important wins in Miami. This is the first time with the Defund campaign, for example, that there's been a massive coalitional effort coalitions. The coalition includes people and organizations that have never mobilized or even talked about divest invest issues before. People who usually focus on housing issues or on transit issues or climate justice, coming together and talking about divesting from policing and investing into all the different things that their organizations are advocating around. So I think that that's been something that's been really, really like incredible to see. Is usually I think organizations kind of focus on their one specific issue area, but divest invest is actually this broad thing that talks about how every aspect of our like social life and our economic life have been divested from as like the strategic kind of right-wing strategy over, you know, so many decades. And so that's been a really, really amazing thing to see locally. I think another thing that has been really incredible to see is just the amount of energy. Like there's been so many people. We brought out, you know, 300 people at some, and I've been seeing this all around the country, you know, people like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people coming out and engaging with the budget process for the first time or engaging with public hearings. Before this campaign started, I didn't even know who our, like this might be embarrassing to say, but I didn't know who our mayor was. I didn't know who my city councilor was. I didn't know anything about the way that like the local government functioned. And I'm a lawyer. So, you know, like people in my organization, just imagine, you know, you don't have this kind of like normal interaction with your local electeds or any understanding of how like this kind of power functions and what they can actually do. And so this whole process of kind of going through the campaign, doing power mapping, figuring out like what these elected officials can actually do, what kind of power they have, what we need to do to move them. I think it's been an incredible educational process for so many people in Miami. And I would say, you know, there's a few lessons that we've learned. I think it's been really kind of eye-opening to see, no matter how many people come out to a public hearing, how little how little these elected officials actually care. I think, you know, this was kind of the first time that we've engaged in this kind of work in this way. And so I think there's a lot of things that we're taking away from it in terms of how we need to shift this next budget cycle and as we're dealing with this No New Jails work. And so I think that that's one thing. The other thing that's been a huge lesson for me is how important organization is. I think that, you know, we've seen such massive protests over the summer. I think I saw something that said, you know, these are the biggest protests that have ever happened in US history. And I think that with that, you know, there's a recognition that like divest invest is important. There's a problem with the way that police function in our communities. Like these are things that are becoming like understood by the general, you know, this is like something that is becoming like a popular opinion, which it wasn't, I feel like, a decade ago. And I think that like with that and with the formation of organizations, like organizations are the ones that can actually guide the policy change with this like sustained campaign work. And so that's been a huge thing for me to just see, you know, there's how important protests are, as well as how important it is to build organizations with leadership and with membership and all of these different people who get engaged in different kinds of ways to really try to figure out how we're going to actually move this strategy to change the things that people on the streets are asking for.
Thank you so much. There was so much in that I think is really rich and important. So unfortunately, I'm going to close us out, but we really wanted to try and make an interactive visual experience for the audience. And so we asked each of our fellows, each of the projects, to share with us a photo or an image that kind of manifested the work that they do, and tell us really briefly. And so in 30 seconds or less, tell us why this image is so important to your work. So I want to go ahead and do that. And maybe also to that point, share with us, if you can, kind of if this embodies a win, share with us that win, and if there's a lesson in it for Leslie or for Jill that you all didn't get to share that. And so the first one we have is from Jill and Tiffany. Do y'all want to share what this image is and why it's so important and why it manifests your work?
Yes, can I share my screen? Unless Tiffany, you had
I think it's on the screen. Do you see it? It's a picture of a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous woman in a pink hat.
Oh, okay, cool. Sorry. I thought it would be another image. Was that
Oh, do you want, you can also share your screen if you have a different image.
Tiffany, did you share that one?
Yeah, this is Miss Dorothy Hinton Adams, who was one of the first Black Mama bailout mamas from the very first bailout. And this is her at Ebenezer Baptist Church when the church picked up on a bailout project. And so Jill had participated in a conference that the church did around bail. And I thought it demonstrated a win because it showed how pervasive this politic was becoming among people that were unlikely. And it turns out Miss Dorothy and my mom actually share a birthday and have maintained a friendship during this time. So it's just sort of like that thread of elders and love and family woven through our communities.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the next one, and then Tiffany, Jill, let's have you at the very end just share your screen briefly. So the next one that we have is gonna be Leslie. And Leslie, if you wanna share also a victory that ties into this, we would love to hear that too.
Okay, so I drew this. I had to do a presentation last year for the board, and it was like, I didn't feel like just like doing a slide. So I just like, you know what, I'm just gonna draw a representation of my work. And I think there's a lot of different things obviously in here that embodies my work because we were doing participatory defense. We passed policies so that formerly incarcerated people could vote. We passed bail reform. We started pushing for justice reinvestment. So all those things are kind of like pictured here. We bailed out Black mothers. And I think the most important thing was just the vein across the kind of middle of the drawing is just like it says base building, because this is really the root and the foundation of community organizing is you have to build your base. And I think in terms of like thinking about base building, you have to think about it as a part of the work, meaning that our people and all the bullshit that you have to deal with, excuse my language, all of the drama that comes with working with our people and you know, sifting through trauma is actually the work. So that's like super important to me. And I think as far as, and thank you everybody in the chat. Yeah, you know, I'm an artist too, you know how I do. But also I think one of our biggest wins was the fact that we took over 100 formerly incarcerated people to the Capitol. Many of us, that was our first time to the Capitol, including myself. And we lobbied for, you know, bail reform amongst other things. And, you know, we weren't able to pass that bill, but on April 9th of this year, the Nevada Supreme Court passed an ordinance, I guess you could say, it's probably not called that, but they passed a decision from the Nevada Supreme Court that basically was everything that was in our bill. It was, and it really just like changed the whole bail system in the entire state. So we were not the lawyers up there arguing, you know, those points, but we still take that win as our own because obviously it takes the community groundwork to even get to that point. So, and that was all led by formerly incarcerated people. And I think one more lesson that I would say is just formerly incarcerated people, not even just formerly incarcerated people, but just impacted people, period. The people who experience these policies on the ground every day really have to be in the forefront. And so that's what we're trying to build out here and just keep it going.
Yes, and also you think you know somebody and then they just pull out with this amazing, you never mentioned, this is an incredibly powerful piece. Thank you, Leslie. And then last, Tiffany.
Thank you.
Guys, I'm wrong, sorry, the Miami crew.
Thanks, Marbre. So Neffy is a beautiful local activist and singer, and these are her children. And before this photo was taken, her babies here actually helped her sing a rendition of a song she has called I Love Being Black, which was a hit at our Free the Block campaign launch party in Miami. So just really quickly, a little bit of context. Miami, like most cities in the US, is a deeply segregated city. You know, structural anti-Black racism shows up in undermined access to food, land, schooling, housing. Black people are 2 to 5 times more likely to be arrested and detained pre-trial in Miami-Dade County. So, we love this photo because it centers and foregrounds the dignity and participation of Black children. And the last thing I just wanted to say about this photo is, these municipal invest divest campaigns can sometimes feel like a newer tactic within a more contemporary movement, but we also hold the truth and collective obligation that we're part of a centuries-long struggle contesting for power and emancipation. And so we use divest invest campaigns to study, combat, and expose the historic disinvestment and brutality imposed on Black families in South Florida for generations, towards a public safety in which all of us can enjoy the fruits of our labor, in which Black children can grow and thrive without fear.
Thank you so much for that. And now, Tiffany.
Thank you. I was feeling so tired earlier today, and I'm just excited and energized now watching this stuff. So this photo is just a small faction of a coalition called Decarcerate Sacramento. Decarcerate Sacramento is a broad coalition of people in Sacramento who are fighting to stop jail expansions, in pretrial confinement, and address budget violence. And this photo was taken after we defeated the county's longstanding plans to expand the jail system. And they would have used lease revenue bonds from the state, which would have committed the county to expending multiple millions of dollars to expanding the carceral system over the course of the next decade. And we stopped this plan in a matter of months. The way that we did this was having an incredibly diverse group of people who are part of this coalition, meaning skills from people who are students, activists, organizers, doctors, lawyers, people who are living on the inside of jails and their families who are living on the outside. And we built on the work also that had been done in other communities, taking seriously the lessons learned and employing them. And I just love this photo because it also shows that we use joy as a propellant. And this coalition, we really emphasize, like I mentioned earlier, loving each other and building each other up as a priority. And it has manifested into an incredibly powerful force in Sacramento community in this moment, and hopefully in many more moments to come. Thank you.
I love that. Joy is a propellant. So now I'm going to invite you, Jill, to share your screen to give us the image that you have and a brief description of why this manifests your work.
Okay, it's my screen sharing this view. Cool.
Yeah.
So I love that Tiffany shared a photo from the very first Black Mamas bailout that we did, because this one is from the most recent Black Mamas bailout that we did. And so the Song chapter in Atlanta has done bailouts since Song founded the Black Mamas bailout in 2017. And most recently, the one in 2019, launched our campaign to close the Union City Jail, which is the jail in which Black women, primarily Black women, are caged in Fulton County. And so every year when we've done the bailouts, it's from there that we've gotten, that we freed Black mamas. And so our work incorporated a lot of what we learned about participatory budgeting and working with budgets through the Law for Black Lives Fellowship, and also some work around how we can not only defund the county police department and the jail budget, but also use those funds to give more self-determination to the community to determine how those funds are actually allocated. So in order to reimagine public safety through how money is spent, we decided that not only did we have to take that money from what's considered public safety by the state, but also redefine public safety by reshaping the budget priorities, right? And so this is just, I love this photo because it's the children of the Black mamas we built out. They created this banner for us at the homecoming from the bailout, and it says, money kept them in, Black love got them out. And I feel like that characterizes the spirit and the energy that we're trying to bring to our work. Thank you for letting me share.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jill. And hi, Naz. And so I feel like we're going to end this first panel. I want to thank y'all so much for the incredible work y'all are doing to really defund this system, but keeping in mind the way that we're also creating these systems. And I think that a through line for us was just around love and joy. And how do we actually carry that into our work and create that? So I want to thank each of y'all for the joy and love y'all have brought to this space and for the incredible work that you do. And I'll pass it to Amika to take us to the next panel. Oh, you're on mute, Amika.
Sorry. Thank you, Marbre, and thank you, everyone. That panel was really beautiful. I just enjoyed and just loved hearing about the work y'all are doing, and also watching Leslie low-key flex her artistic skills. That was awesome. I'd like to invite the panelists for the second panel, which we're calling Frontiers of Defund, now to turn on their video so we can have a chat and get started. So I think we're gonna start this one like we started the last one. And I'll just remind you of the 3 intro questions, just so they're fresh in your mind. So give us your name, pronouns, and location, and then my people are, and answer the question, we would be safer and stronger if we invested in. And I'll start with you, Erin.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Erin Miles Cloud. I use she, her pronouns. My comrade is Joyce McMillan, who also uses she, her pronouns. We're in the Bronx and Harlem, respectively, both on Lenape lands. And our people are all of those who reclaim safety, wellness, welfare, and family preservation from the foster system who's stolen this narrative. Our people are Black families and communities. Our people are mamas, caretakers, parents, incarcerated people, people who use drugs, people who build in spaces that no one else will go. Our people are everyone who rejects that the law defines who can be our family. Our people are our own Black children and our own Black families. We would be safer and stronger if we invested in dismantling the family destruction system and building alternatives that truly support families. Our families need support, not surveillance and separation. Our families need housing, not foster homes. Our families need cash assistance, not foster care subsidies. Our families need community and togetherness, not government removals. And quite honestly, there's so many things we could be doing. Investing in doulas, harm reduction. There's just actually so much more we could be doing to be promoting wellness. And our families not only need, but they deserve something better. We deserve investment in Black love and joy, because that is what makes us safe and strong.
Thank you, Erin. Tyler or Andrew, I can't remember which one of you is gonna kick it off for your team.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Hairston. I use he, they pronouns. And my comrade is Tyler Wittenberg. He uses he, him pronouns. He's in Durham. I'm in Oklahoma City by way of Austin. So my people are children and descendants of the Great Migration all across this country. We would be safer and stronger if we truly invested in young people. As we sit in this moment of dual pandemics, the coronavirus pandemic and the anti-Black police violence that we see day in and day out, we can register the wins that we have seen this summer after the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, and others. School districts in Minneapolis, Rochester, New York, Oakland, California, Columbus, Ohio, Denver, Colorado, and others voted either in their local contracts with police departments that the school districts had, or to disband their school police departments entirely. And we are so ready to use that momentum to go into this next phase of the fight to dismantle the school to prison pipeline, end school policing once and for all, and create that future where young people can truly thrive and flourish.
You. Thank you for kicking us off like that. That was beautiful. I'm gonna get started, I think, with Joyce. I'm gonna start with you. And I wanna, I really want you to help us understand this, like why we should be thinking about the foster care system when we talk about invest, divest, and abolition. This panel is called Frontiers of Defund in part because I don't think folks are including in the broader conversation other spaces that are outside of the criminal legal system, but that are adjacent or sometimes feed into or are impacted by the criminal legal system. So help us understand why it's important to consider the foster care system when we're talking about Invest Divest.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you guys for inviting me to be a part of this awesome fellowship. I've learned so much from each and every one of you and from the work that Erin and I have done together. It's important because no system built to protect children, quote unquote, protect them, should look like a system that tortures adults. And so I just want to run through the parallels where they're both strip search, children under the guise of checking for marks and bruises, even though they came under the surveillance of the system for reasons related to poverty that they frame to be neglect. They're both separated from everything they know and love. They both have set visit times on set visit days. They both eat what they are served. They both have oversight during the visit. They both change homes and cells regularly. They both use either garbage bags or pillowcases to change their locations. And not to take up a lot of time because we don't have a lot, at the end, they're both paroled, one back to their community, the other back to their family. And they both have oversight during that parole period and can be removed again immediately for any small, minute infraction or anything that someone deems to be an infraction based on their own implicit biases.
Joyce, I'm actually going to ask you to expand upon that, upon when you said they're both paroled back to their community. Help us understand that and what you mean by that.
So the criminal justice system or criminal injustice system and the foster care system that some people call the child welfare system, that is really the family destruction system, coined now the family regulation system, looks identical. So when they use the same language even. So when people do their time in prison and they come home, they're usually either on probation or parole. It's not a clean break. So you're not actually free because your movement is limited and who you interact with is limited and everything pretty much is limited. Where you can work at, the hours you can work. And so the same thing happens when a child is returned to their parent through the family regulation system. There is a quote unquote case manager who's not a social worker who oversees that case. You're a case, you're not a person, you're not a family. And they tell you what hours you need to be spending with your children. They can remove the child if they come and they feel your home is dirty. Again, that's a feeling that's implicit, right? When we talk about poverty versus real neglect, if they think you don't have enough food to last for the week and they know you don't have money coming in that week to purchase more food, then you don't have enough food. And these are the things they surveillance in the family regulation system. They may be surveilling something else in the criminal system, but the point is they both have surveillance. And based on whatever the person deems the family needs during that time of probation, parole, or surveillance, they can make the decision to separate the family again.
Thank you for that, Joyce. I think it was important to understand exactly what you meant by that. And it painted the picture so well, I think, for all of us. I'm gonna turn it for a second to Tyler and Andrew. I'll actually ask you this, Tyler. When we think about police in our schools or the presence of police in our schools, much like in the foster care system, they don't necessarily have the name police. They appear in many different ways. They have different names. So if you could talk to us about how police like show up in schools, what are the different ways that sort of presence manifests in schools, and what is the impact that it has on our children?
One thing I want to say from the outset, the same police that are killing individuals like Breonna Taylor, like Walter Wallace Jr., they are the same police in our schools. And what youth experience is really a conditioning. They're being conditioned to accept a heavily policed environment, whether or not they're in school or they're back in their community. I've spoken to students who know that them going to school could lead to them going into the justice system quicker than if they stayed at home. There's self-determination that's involved in this, right? We need our own self-determination to determine the type of environments that we want to create for ourselves. And then there's also this imposed environment, right? What schools give us are an example of the harm that's being exposed, but also an opportunity to lift up and build up those youth who are going through it to create an abolitionist environment. So what I want folks to know is just that on a daily basis, there are Black and brown students, especially Black and brown young women and LGBTQ+ students who are going through a police atmosphere on a daily basis, who are more likely to be arrested, suspended, expelled, restrained, whatever. All of, you know what I'm saying, all of these negative points that we hit on, they are more likely to go through that than their white peers. And at the same time, this is an opportunity for us to lift those folks up and give them the opportunity to create a plan, an abolitionist-based plan on how to move forward and how to create a space that really exemplifies the world that they want to see for themselves. But to directly speak to your question, it mentally, spiritually, and physically harms Black and brown youth and LGBTQ+ youth throughout this nation.
Thank you for that. That actually makes me think of a question for Aaron. And I wonder, Aaron, if you could just tell us a little bit about what it might look like for children, because I think people sometimes are really concerned, or at least mask their concern for children, right? And they use it to justify the involvement of police and other forces that criminalize parents. What does it look like for our children if we remove these forces from our family care system, or whatever they're calling it now? What does it look like for our children?
So a future for our children, if we remove systems that police, is a future where they can be liberated and free. That's what it looks like. The reality is the system says it penalizes and is punishing and creating systems of safety when really they are promoting systems of disciplinary measures, right? The very things that they're saying they're rescuing our children from are the very ideologies that they create with billions of dollars. And then they blame it on the Black family. They blame it on the Black parent. When we are resisting, as a Black mother myself, every day I'm resisting my children being in places of carceral spaces. I looked for kindergartens last year, and every public school in my neighborhood in the South Bronx, I walked through police officers. And yet as they normalize this in the world, as they normalize a system that can remove children because their parents don't have a home and won't give them a home, they create the very construct of disciplinary measures that they're saying that they're aiming to avoid. They're not aiming to avoid it. They're aiming to create a system and structure to exploit us off of it, to create money and to justify supremacy. So to your question, Mika, what would it look like? It would look like us building to that actual freedom, to that building to that joy, to that love, or us building to that liberation.
Yes, yes, yes to that. So Andrew, I actually, people say a lot, and I've heard people say, especially in our professional circles, that if abolition is going to happen really soon, or if it can happen, one of the first places we might see it happen is in schools. Why do you think people say that? And what are some of the first signs that we might see?
Yeah, I think that that first step toward abolition being the ending of school policing resonates with folks because of the really detrimental impacts that we see school policing have on children, and these really horrific videos that we've seen, especially over the past 5 years, of almost weekly young Black people being assaulted by school police officers across the South, across other parts of the country. And they can really feel that and empathize with that. They aren't parents or young people themselves. And I think particularly this summer with the abolition platform that was released by abolitionist organizers and having that tenet of ending school policing and getting cops off of campus, folks felt that resonance even more, that this is something that is achievable. And then when you marry that with those victories in places like Minneapolis and Oakland this summer, it's like, this is something that can be done. And I do want to acknowledge the decades-long, centuries-long struggle within the Black radical tradition to end the criminalization of young people, to end the school-to-prison pipeline in recent decades. But this intense militarization feels like a very specific phenomenon of the 21st century, right? Of Columbine, post-Columbine, post-9/11, right? Like this experience that Aaron had of going through, there's metal detectors in elementary schools, right? Folks can think back a generation to say police officers weren't this ubiquitous in the schools that we attended or that our parents attended. And so it feels like that call for the end of school policing really feels more tangible to folks, that they remember a time when within this context of society, it wasn't as prevalent, the presence of police.
Yeah. So I'm gonna actually, this question was intended for maybe one or two of you, but I'm gonna invite all four of you in whatever order, I think, whatever order you feel moved to do so, to offer up one lesson, or one win, excuse me, that you or partners who are doing similar work, either comrades or other folks that you know of, have experienced in the last 6 months or even year in the work that you're doing. So lift up a win and then give us a lesson that you've learned from that win.
I can speak on that. So right after the uprising, after the murder of George Floyd, a lot of folks said, oh, these school districts that are removing police are being reactionary. This is performative activism. Andrew, we were there, like, come on, we were there, not to use the Joe Biden, come on. We were there, we were literally there in rooms where folks put a lot of these thoughts together, and then they went out throughout the United States and organized youth, the Alliance for Educational Justice, Jonathan Stiff, Maria Fernandez, I call your name out. Folks put a lot of effort into creating a national framework for police-free schools and helped local organizers fight for police-free schools, so that when the actual uprising happened, taking police out of schools was like, okay, cool. You want to defund police? Yeah. We'll just take them out of school. Like we pressured them. We organized them into removing police from schools. All right. So I think one lesson I've learned is that relationships, that saying, small is all. The relationships you build with folks, the digging in deep to building a base, the work you do to we created a history of school policing. We created multiple tools for other folks to use throughout the United States so that they could promote this idea of police-free schools. And they were used, and then we learned from those groups, collected those lessons, disseminated. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is organizing works. And the victories we've seen recently. They didn't just happen because of this current uprising was an opportunity for folks who have been putting in the work, right, to really strike when the iron is hot. So one thing I've learned is be prepared. Put in the work, be prepared, and then you can win. And then we will win. Our destiny is to win.
If I can go next. When we talk about the parallels between mass incarceration and foster care, there's something called the State Central Registry that happens in the family regulation system. In 2018 in New York, roughly 50,000 people went on that state registry. And that state registry has very similar effects to a felony conviction. But what's very interesting is you don't have to go to court to get on the registry. And more than half of that 50,000 went on that registry without ever going to court. And another very large percentage didn't even know they were on that registry until they sought employment and were denied for being on that registry. And when you go on the registry, again, it's a case manager who makes the decision as to whether or not you go on the registry. And you stay on the registry until your youngest child turns the age of 28. And as a derivative, if you have another child, before that child is the age of 28, your time on the registry starts over again. And what's very interesting, to get around the whole judicial thing, the case manager finds you indicated, not guilty. So she just indicates you, and that puts you on this list. And so I organized to change it, and we reduced it. Although I wanted to abolish it, we reduced it to 8 flat years. And there's no derivative of the time starting over again if you give birth to another child. And we changed 4 components. The second component is, before we worked from the position of some credible evidence. And just a caller anonymously reporting your family for something was some credible evidence, and you could go on the registry. And so we raised the standard to an actual legal standard of a preponderance of evidence. Prior to this law being passed in April, even if you did go to court and a judge said that you were not guilty of whatever they were accusing you of, our CPS still had the ability to put you on the registry, and they did. And so now if you do go to court and you have a win in court, they cannot put you on the registry. And last, prior, you had to apply for a hearing to come off the registry within 90 days of them sending you a letter saying that the case is closed. And most people never received that letter. And so if that 90 days escaped you, you didn't have an option or a way to come off the registry. So we changed that to, at any point in time, you can request a hearing to come off the registry. But in addition to that, before you could not introduce any additional evidence to support why you should come off the registry. And so wrapped up in that last portion is that also. So say for instance, Erin came under the surveillance for the use of a narcotic. And since then she completed a drug rehab and became a drug counselor. Prior, you wouldn't be able to present that as evidence to show that you should come off the registry because they did not allow you to introduce any new evidence. But now you can introduce any evidence that's relative to showing improvement in your life. And so that was a huge win. When I started this battle in 2018, people said it would never happen. And it happened within 2 short years. And it's retroactive, so it will impact millions of people to come off this registry. And my takeaway is I had a lot of fights with a lot of white people who were a part of the coalition that I put together to bring this bill forth. And they wanted little changes, but little changes don't trickle down and impact my community in a positive way. So I didn't just fight the system. I kind of fought with them too. And I say, go big or go home. And that's the lesson.
Yes, thank you. Erin, Andrew, do you want to offer a win and a lesson?
Yeah, so I would say our win, I'll talk about it when we get to the picture, but I also will say Joyce's work with JMAC for Families is a huge win, and it's a huge win in our community to see the leadership of the work that she's doing, the organization that she's built, you know, coming together, the activism that's happened with Plan, the coalition that she steers. And over the summer, I would say it's been a huge victory to see the organizing of protests in the name of defunding ACS in New York City. And Joyce has been a huge activist and organizer in talking about Black Families Matter. And I would say it's been my first time in my life that I've seen people come out in multiple boroughs protesting that we need to defund and demand something different. And it's been, you know, really from the people for the people. So that is a huge, huge, huge giant win. And lesson learned, follow Joyce, you know?
Yes. Wherever Joyce goes, I agree. Yeah, I think a lesson for me in this moment, and I think everybody so far on the webinar has reflected this, is that it is a centuries-long tradition, right? And it has preceded us and it will succeed us in our lifetimes. I think especially, so I live in Texas in normal times, and I think we recognize that this will be a long fight to end school policing in Texas. There are just a number of sophisticated infrastructures on school campuses, internal police departments, security systems, surveillance measures that impact young Texans day in and day out. But just recognizing the wave of momentum of the summer, and even thinking about, let's say, groups that Tyler shouted out, like the Alliance for Educational Justice, folks huddled in Baltimore in December of 19 and kind of strategized about what the national campaign for police-free schools would look like over the next decade. And we were thinking about like 5 to 10 years from that moment in 2019, seeing some of the victories that we achieved this summer, right? Ended the law enforcement contracts with city police departments, ended entire school police departments, right? So I'm just centering that momentum and thinking about the long game in the South and realizing that, you know, we will, as Tyler said, as other folks said, win in the end.
Go ahead, Tyler.
I have one comment to make. I think we need, as abolitionists, to come up with faith-based strategy for the South. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay.
It's imperative, and it's natural. Jesus didn't ask nobody to go on a cell. I'm gonna shut up, but.
All right. So as we close out, I just want to thank all of you just for bringing your brilliance and all of yourselves and all of your work to this community and to the broader community of folks who are struggling and working for Black liberation. I do want to now ask you all to tell us about the photos that you submitted to us as representative of your work. Kim, if you will start with the first photo. So this is the photo submitted by Andrew and Tyler. If one of you would like to tell us about that.
So this is from the Youth Justice Project. We have a really strong cohort of youth. We spent one day with them talking about the school to prison pipeline and asked them what needs to be done to fix it. They came up with this 5-point plan. I promise you, within one day. They said removing police is cool. Ending exclusionary discipline is cool, but we want the ability to select our own courses. We want to end academic tracking. We want culturally relevant curriculum, and we want a mental health space in every single school. And we want a specific space for LGBTQ plus folks within every school. And what it represents for me as on our track towards abolition is that we're not just talking about getting rid of police. we're talking about doing that plus, right? In one day, this group of youth just laid down the plus. This is what we want as a holistic vision for Durham Public Schools. And I think that if we take that same holistic view as we go about our work to decriminalize society, to abolish the prison industrial complex, I think, yeah, I just think it's helpful. And I'm riding with these youth the long way, as they say. I'm riding with, you know, yeah, I ride with them all day. So just wanted to propose this as an example of an abolitionist theory. Remove police and do all these things, and it came natural to them. But remove police, do all these things, and this is a bit of an abolitionist vision. Like, imagine if our societies had culturally relevant courses that anyone could take. Imagine if our societies had a space where you could go to for mental health. If I'm going through something, I could literally just pull up the same way I pull up at Burger King. I could pull up at a mental health space, right? Imagine if our societies had someone who's going to walk you through your conflicts. So that's why I think that this particular image is characteristic of the fight that Andrew and I are trying to do. And yeah, just leave it at that.
Thank you.
So Joyce and I, along with 2 other organizations, started this campaign to ensure that everyone in hospitals are obtaining informed consent prior to drug testing pregnant and parenting people. And I just want to reflect on my interview for L4BL when I was talking to Marbre about this. And she was like, well, you know, it's like a bill. And I was like, yeah, but it's a bill and we want to base build with this bill, right? And L4BL totally got that, right? They were like, this is a bill for base building, for organizing. And I would say COVID really pushed us to really make sure that it was base building, right? Because there was no legislative session. So, you know, not having a bill in a legislative session is a pretty big hit if you are thinking about a bill's purpose to be just the bill, right? But the purpose of this work was to decrease isolation around those people who are resisting the family regulation system. And so for about the last year and a half, we have been convening group calls about every other month with about 40 to 50 people who continue to come. Based on our survey, 50% of those people identify as being directly impacted either as a youth or a parent, coming from movements of reproductive justice, harm reduction, and child welfare abolition, as well as criminal legal system abolition. So coming from an intersection of different spaces. And in that work, we asked people, like, with no legislative session, do you still want to be here? And they said yes. And they said yes, they still wanted to come. And what they asked to do was to dream. They said, we wanted to really dream about what can be next. And they built off our comrades' work with Defund and said, we don't want this anymore. We now see that we can defund. We're not in the same movement building space as a prison abolition system is. And so like what Tyler was saying, you know, there's a lot of hard work that it takes to take up the opportunity. And so what you will see here is a draft by Adriana of a visual synthesis of a meeting that we held in September about what it meant to actually reimagine support, reclaim that narrative, remember that people are looking for holistic care, sovereignty, autonomy. They're thinking about funding structures, expanding mutual aid, donations, figuring out what government supports people do want and don't want, and really thinking about who also needs to be in the space. And so it is a huge win for us. I may not be the win in the sense of like a policy win, the way people think about it, but I think without the support and vision of L4BL that like understood that these are tools to bring people together, not necessarily tools to always say like this is a legal win, we would not have been able to continue building out this space. And for us, it's a huge win, it's a huge space, and we are thrilled about it.
This is beautiful. Thank you for sharing it with us. And oh, go ahead, Joyce.
I'm sorry, Amika. I just want to add, what's very interesting is we don't have to reimagine support for other communities. For one, they don't need supports in the same way because they have not been systemically set up to fail. And even through everything that they have set up to have our motherhood our parenthood tested, we continue to thrive, and that's not good enough. So they rip us apart. And the only one that they will allow us to mother in any shape, form, or fashion are other people's children. We could be the nanny, we could be the babysitter, we could be everything except a parent to our own children because we don't have enough. So we need to come into their house, clean their house, benefit very small off of their resources as they pay us crumbs, disrespect us, talk down to us, and be the best we can be to someone else's child. And I think that's been the history of this country. And that's what I see when I see these photos. I don't see us carrying our children and then being able to raise them to adulthood as the picture shows in the far right upper corner. And so that's a problem that we have to change. We too should be allowed to be parents. We have a right to be parents because we birthed these children. They're our children.
Yes, yes. Thank you for sending us out on that word, Ms. Joyce. And again, thank you all for being here and for being a part of this community and this fellowship and for doing this beautiful liberatory work. Yeah, I'm just so grateful to you all and grateful to have you as colleagues and comrades. So with that said, I'm gonna turn it over to Erica to start our third panel.
Hey y'all, I'm Erica, Erica Perry. I use any pronouns. So excited to talk to y'all today and to hold this panel. Our fellows have been amazing, so really excited to hear from James, Wesleyan, Nzinga, and Nora to be in conversation with us about creating a future without cages and answer the question of what is possible when we defund cops and cages. What does it look like to be building Black futures? And so y'all, we'll start in the same way that the other panels did with introductions from our panelists that will include their answers to who are your people and what should we be invested in. So I'm gonna start with you, James.
Oh, okay then. Thank you everybody for being here, and thanks to all the other panelists. This has been a real treat. I didn't absorb that I was going to actually get to be blessed with information today. I hadn't processed that. So just again, thanks to everyone, each and every one of my peers for their contributions today and their vulnerability. My people are Black people. For my people, every breath is an act of resistance, of rebellion, of connection with our ancestors. And within every breath is the ever-burning flame that lights and leads our way to collective liberation. My people are born addicted to crack cocaine. My people are separated from the person who birthed them at a very young age. My people are wrongfully accused of murder, are accused of crimes of addiction, of crimes of poverty, of crimes of systemic neglect. My people are adopted away from those who birthed them and thus disconnected from their ancestry. My people carry light-skinned privilege. My people extract value out of white supremacist and colonialist systems and deliver that value to the people. My people provide methods of translating white supremacist and classist and elitist language to prevent words from being used as tools of white power. My people dance like nobody's watching. We would be safer and stronger if we invested in supporting every single person on this earth to thrive. We can start by ensuring that everybody has their needs met, and we can start by transitioning from a culture of criminalization to a culture of compassion and care.
Thank you so much for sharing. Appreciate you and loving you and your people. Next, we're gonna pass it to Wesley.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'm really excited to be here on this panel. So, hi, I'm Wesley, pronouns he, him. I live in Memphis, Tennessee. My people don't have all the answers, but are committed to finding some. My people are strengthened by their ancestors and are students of history. My people have been told all kinds of fallacies about who we are and what we are and work every day to rediscover and rename themselves. My people are making a way out of no way under a global system of racial capitalism. My people are enraged. My people are full of joy. My people are Black. My people are queer. My people are not afraid of being radical. my people are getting free. We would be safer and stronger if we invested in Black children and their caregivers. We would be safer and stronger if we invested in systems that would allow us to rest and reflect and reassess. Finally, we would be safer and stronger if we invested in our spiritual, physical, and mental well-being.
Thank you so much, Wesley. My people are your people are mine. It's a song by Wendy too, y'all should look it up. We're gonna pass it to Nzinga.
Peace, y'all. My name is Nzinga Hooker. Pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm based in the DMV area, currently in Baltimore, Maryland. My people are Black folks, Black women, mamas, aunties, and grandmas who told me when I was real young that I was a good listener and I was going to be some sort of teacher. Black queer folks who showed me how to love upon myself and present my full self. Black organizers, movement actors, movement babies who parents had them at protest rallies and teach-ins on the weekends instead of Disneyland and whatnot. Black dreamers who see and feel so much. Those are my people, the folks who have taught me about movement lawyering and abolition and transformative justice. And my people were the first folks that I heard say, we keep us safe and that no one is coming to save us, not to look to these institutions and systems that are invested in these policies and practices that harm us. But instead, our vision of safety and power includes an economy that centers care, solidarity, and Black working class people, and investment in those things, and investment in that, in relationship building, and Black folks' leadership and capacity to lead the work to create and implement this alternative economy, this different way of being with each other.
Yes, to care and solidarity economies and different ways of being with each other. It's already just so beautiful. So I'm gonna pass it to Nora to round us out. And then we're gonna get into some questions.
Hi, thank you guys so much for having me. Hold on, I'm experiencing some issues right now. Screen decided to give up on me. Okay, I'm back, hopefully. Okay. So my name is Nora, my pronouns are they, them, and I live in Oakland, California on unceded Ohlone land. My people are Black folks. They are loud country freedom fighters and city-born abolitionists. They're sex workers and disabled activists. My people are mentally ill and essential workers. They're queer and unhoused folks who taught me how to survive and thrive and what the meaning of family is. My people are the people who imagine a better world that they can't see. My people are Afrofuturist architects, and my people know they will be free. We will be safer and stronger when we study the rich lessons of our roots. Our safety comes through and from one another when we remember and take back our power from the state and forge connections and trust with one another again. I believe wholly in a people power and that no state can delegitimize.
Thank you so much, Nora. I too, again, I love your people too. So I want to get into some questions, y'all, and we don't have a lot of time, so I'll be like, y'all, can y'all be sharp and concise? So I want to start with you, Nzinga. If you could describe your work and how does it help imagine a future without cages, without police?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to move fast, Erica. So my project is in partnership with One DC. It's an organization here in the District of Columbia that houses a Black Worker Center. And we held different efforts. So we held a freedom school and a listening session with Black workers in the district that focus on how we divest from economic policies that have been harmful, exploitative, and punitive, and have not provided the economic security to Black folks. And my project is a small part of imagining a world without cages. It's about Black workers in the district coming together to co-learn the threads across carceral systems and capitalism, both systems that are primarily concerned with the control and marginalization of Black people, other people of color, and poor folks. It's a start to imagining a world without cages through imagining a world without a capitalist economic system. Because we have all been forced to participate in capitalism and it does not work for us. So this project is about imagining a future where people are invested in cooperative and solidarity economies, where people do not have to work if they don't want to, and not working does not mean this moral failing. And that does not mean that you don't deserve to have those things that so many folks on previous panels talked about: food, shelter, housing. A future where working is not the primary way in which people can receive the income to provide for themselves and their family. So that's a brief description of my project and how I see it helping to imagine a future without cages.
Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing in the role that capitalism plays in cages and policing, and how, if we are to deal with that, we too can get to a society that moves more away from policing and cages. So next I want to pass it to you, Nora. Same questions. Please explain your work and how it helps us imagine a future without cages.
So I'm a transformative justice practitioner, and transformative justice is an approach. It's a tactic to addressing violence, harm, and abuse without creating more or perpetuating those systems that do so. One of the goals of transformative justice is to build out these alternative responses to the current system that puts profit over people and punishment over rehabilitation. Transformative justice acknowledges that we have to have a collective, that we are collectively responsible to each other for violence and harm and the harm reduction that comes with that. What we know is that the state reproduces and maintains itself on violence, and TJ, Transformative Justice, takes that power back by connecting violence to the conditions that create the violence and addressing it at the root. It asks us to rely on ourselves and get in deep relationship with our communities to build the power to not only address violence, but to prevent it. TJ shows us that we would be safer and stronger if we build vulnerable relationships with those in our community, if we address the abuse in our own families and acknowledge the harm we do to ourselves, and how all of this can be a catalyst for the state's punitive incarceration.
Thank you for that, Nora, and appreciating that we are all collectively responsible for each other and for the harm. And so next I want to pass it to you, Wesley. Same question. What's your work look like? How does it help us imagine a future without cages?
So my work is concerned with budgeting. It's concerned with municipal budgets and looking at where money is going and also where people want their money to be going. So how does that kind of imagine a future of abolitionist future, I guess? The idea is, what people are concerned about is not congruous with where budgets or where cities and counties are spending their money at. And so trying to get people's input and feedback around budgeting and make that a part of the budgeting process itself, and like allow community feedback to be to help the budget take shape, and then allow that to divest money from the carceral state and into systems of care and support for our most marginal people in our community.
Right. Thank you so much Wesley for showing us what that could look like. And gonna end it with James. Same question, just what does your work look like, and how does it help us imagine a future without cages?
Sure. Anti-Police Terror Project is working on several programs and campaigns that I think fit this category. First, we're trying to create alternatives to policing. We've launched Mental Health First, which is a crisis intervention model staffed by volunteer mental health workers and interventionists that provides a crisis response without law enforcement involvement. The program was started in Sacramento at the beginning of this year, and we just launched our Oakland chapter as well. And so again, the goal there is to replace police who respond to mental health crises with violence, as we're seeing explode today with the killing of Walter Wallace, as we've seen locally in the Bay Area with the murder of Stephen Taylor, of Miles Hall, of Caleb Moore, and of many others. We're trying to shift away from that model and build the future that we believe in, because we found that the state is unwilling to invest in those alternative or in the transformative solutions that we believe in. We're also co-sponsoring legislation that will provide multi-year grants to organizations to do the same. in the state of California, there's a bill called the Crisis Act that was sponsored by Assemblymember Comlodger. We made it through the legislature, and Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed it, but we're running the bill next year and expect it to be signed, and we'll be holding him accountable for the veto along the way. And then third, this is the 5th year of our campaign as APTP to divest 50% of the City of Oakland's policing budget and have that money invested in ways that truly create public safety. The campaign's called Defund OPD, and the immense political pressure that we've put on has forced the administration and the city council to adopt a position that's more supportive of defunding the police than we could have ever anticipated when we started. And then the last thing I want to say is that one of the things I think makes APTP really unique is while we're doing all of the above, we still are able to and make a priority to center victims of police violence and make their campaigns for justice central to our efforts and our work, right? There's a lot of talk of the incongruity between wanting cops jailed or imprisoned for killing someone and at the same time a want for an abolitionist future, and it's very difficult for us to hold both of those pieces in harmony. And I think that at APTP, by both campaigning for justice alongside families and then giving them something else to campaign for other than the justice that comes through the incarceration of the person who killed their loved one, is the transformative portion of our work, and where we find a lot of organizations that work with folks that are directly impacted by police violence.
Thank you for that, James. And I want to stay with you because the next question is really about how have people in your community, especially people who are directly impacted, received the work that you're doing, and how do they feel about your work? And I know you kind of started talking about it a bit in the way that y'all are centering survivors of violence, and also talking a bit about what looks like momentum around the Defund OPD campaign. So really interested in how your work is landing with community members who are impacted by the issues you're working on.
For sure. I want to lift up the things that the folks on the previous panel were saying. They really spoke to how the relationship building is so important to the work that we're doing right now. And without these relationships and the community education that comes with the development of these relationships, we really can't, we won't achieve success in our campaign. So as APTP, we find our work is the hard work now of re-educating a society that has been entrenched in a mindset of criminalization equals public safety since its creation, or before its creation, even on the other side of the ocean. And so we find a lot of folks are not ready to hear defund, especially right now with the economic crisis and the COVID crisis causing violent crime rates and murder rates to spike. The police are coming out and saying, see, you need us, see, you need public safety, and we create that. And so combating that narrative is very difficult, very real. And I find that we suffer from the problem. It is the fact that we haven't invested in alternatives as a society beforehand. And now our opposition points to the fact that there are no alternatives, and the failure is really a failure of investment. But when police seem to be the only thing that society perceives as solving the public safety problem, it's very difficult to be in the middle of a crime wave. So-called crime wave, excuse me.
Absolutely. Just thank you for framing it that way, because that's absolutely what we're experiencing. So next I want to go to you, Wesley, because I know that you two are, use the Invest Divest framework as an approach to your budget work. So I'm curious about how community members, how your folks are receiving the work you're doing.
Yeah, I would like to say ditto to everything that James said. People are not always as receptive of defund police, but the carceral state as one would think they would be, especially directly impacted people. And I think that's also complicated by the fact that directly impacted people look and occupy different spaces, right? And so they're not all the same, right? So, you know, one person is directly impacted, does not mean that they're directly impacted in the same way, and does not mean that their concerns align with the next directly impacted person. So one thing that I experienced a lot of is just a lot of pushback and a lot of kind of skepticism from people in our community about what it looks like to defund police and not have as many police, or to have no police, right? I went to a school in December, and I talked to a group of teachers, and they were almost all very much against what I was there to talk about. I was with a group of people we were there to talk about, and it was a struggle for us to kind of get them on board with what we're saying, and also like not scare them too much, and but also stay committed to what our values are, right? And so I think I want to go back to something that Leslie said way earlier in this whatever we're doing, which was about base building. She talked about base building. There was a long line of I guess a vein or artery, whatever it was, in the middle of her drawing, and it was about base building. And I think that's really important, because I think you can't get people on board. And I think that it's very presumptuous of people who are organizers or people who are trying to do this work to, and also like kind of coercive too, to try to push people into something that, one, they're not understanding, obviously, and not understanding rightfully so, because we live in a society where we have been trained that a response to crime is police, is jails, right? So yeah, a lot of pushback, but also a lot of lessons learned about base building, about aligning interests, about political education.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that, Wesley, and definitely sharing the complexities of what it looks like to be organized around this. And shout out to the home team, Tennessee. Next, we're going to go to Nora. Nora, I'm curious about how folks who are directly impacted by your issue, how community at large, how folks are like, how it's landing your work.
I think it's safe to say that the community is more than hungry for transformative justice and transformative justice responses to harm and violence in so many exciting and inspiring ways. Briefly lifting up the work of James and the people at APTP, I think MH First is a perfect example of that. It's a community staff approach to mental health calls, which is what the majority of what 911 calls are. This is a program like it's rooted in transformative justice, in that it's asking the community to be the one to step up in response to, as the people best situated to respond to mental health crises of other folks in their community. And you see it in so many different ways as well, transformative justice playing out in so many ways as well throughout communities who form accountability circles and harm reduction support groups, and all these things that you see popping up, and safe houses for domestic violence victims, and all these things that ask us to be in deep community with one another. I think especially with the time that we're in right now, it's clear to see that people are wanting to have these alternatives. They're asking for these alternatives, and they're ready to start working towards alternatives that don't involve police in the state. So I think it's everywhere in the community that you can see, everywhere across this country, across the globe. You can see how transformative justice and alternatives to policing and surveillance has popped up and is becoming a national movement. And that's really exciting.
Thank you so much for that, Nora, and appreciate definitely giving us hope, and like folks are prepared for that and are hopeful for that, especially as we look for alternatives. So y'all, Nzinga, question for you. I know you're working on workers-related issues towards solidarity economies. So if you could just tell us, what that looks like and how folks are receiving it.
Yeah, so I'm the one who applied for the funds from L4BL, but it's really their project. I think one of the things we've been prioritizing is how to make space for Black workers who are most impacted by these issues to lead it and just tell us how to support. So the project is pretty much there. It's directly impacted workers in DC who were able to participate, led it. And I just assisted with co-facilitation in some spaces and providing some resources. But like for a big part of the project was this community learning piece, and it used a popular education model where everyone came into the space with their like experiences and expertise. So there wasn't an authority figure, no lawyer in the room acting as if we had all the knowledge. And from the feedback I received was that folks felt good about the project and how it was conducted. And we did multiple debrief sessions and follow-ups, and they wanted to continue the work. They wanted to continue the project. So it's still ongoing. And they have been leading the work from like how the work is to continue, what are the next steps. We created this website. They were instrumental in creating the websites, how their stories were going to be told, how they were going to be compensated. So we were in discussion, and there was an agreement about how to move forward. And I was committed to doing that no matter how much time. So I think the feedback is that workers appreciated this and that this was their project and they were invested in it and still are.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that, Nzinga. And now, as we round out or finish up this panel, we've had such an amazing time. So yeah, I just want to name, we're going to go 5 minutes over, y'all, because it's been great and juicy. And so y'all, I just want to ask y'all to tell us about your photo and why it represents your work, and if you could do it in 30 seconds. So gonna pass it to you, Nzinga. Or James. We'll go to James.
This is a picture of last weekend at the Justice for Stephen Taylor rally. It was 6 months after Stephen Taylor was murdered by the San Leandro Police Department during a mental health crisis. This is why we create programs like Mental Health First to prevent this type of violence being enacted on our community. The silver lining in this picture is that that's a social justice academy of high schoolers from San Leandro High School that we've been working with as APTP, and they all did poetry about the future that they imagine without this form of policing on this day. And that's right in front of the mayor's house, who they were holding accountable for her lack of engagement. And so, I think this is a nice marriage of lifting up families and giving youth what they need to imagine the better future and to fight for it in an empowered way.
Thank you, James. And yes to young people. Wesley, I know this place. Go, Wesley.
Yes, this is a picture from, I think, 2017. It's actually way before this fellowship started. I wasn't even here, but I used it because I feel like it's a very good kind of like primer for me on where I'm at and what I'm doing. It is a protest, and it shut down everyone shut down the bridge, and that's like a huge thoroughfare. That's a I-40. I feel like in a lot of ways, Memphis kind of organizing space is very much kind of like living in the aftermath of this moment. And interestingly enough, a lot of people claim credit for this moment, kind of like divisively so. But I think what's most powerful about it is that we came together, right? People came together and made shit happen. And it was messy and it didn't look cute all the time, and the aftermath wasn't cute. And elected officials obviously, or maybe inevitably, kind of shirked on their responsibilities. But it moved things, right? And I think that's what is inspiring me right now, and it's kind of the silver lining, is that when we come together, we are powerful.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Wesley. And Nzinga.
Yeah, so this is a picture of folks who participated in the Black Workers Listening Session. And we took this picture right after, and I think it really just represents relationship building for me, and like building these loving and respectful relationships with Black folks who are directly impacted, Black folks in the district, which is where most of my work is happening. And I mean, this picture was so great because all these folks still are heavily involved in this work and this project, or continue to push it forward. And I think like for the folks in this picture, or like leading the next steps in the project. So the project is still ongoing and we're going to 2021 and beyond. And I just think it's a beautiful representation of folks who participate in that one listening session, wanting to be more engaged and really wanted to lead it and take over this project. So this is just a picture of all of those folks.
Thank you so much for that, Nzinga. Nora.
I mean, mine doesn't feel as amazing after everybody else is gone, but this picture represents to me something that I talk a lot about with my partner in crime about the program that we're building out, is that transformative justice is the soil, and it's the soil in which the seeds of abolition and people-powered movements continue to grow. So for us, it's and just for image description purposes, it's a brown hand holding soil with a sprouting plant coming up out of it. And it just means to us that like this, if we want the world, we have to start sowing those seeds. And that means also the internal work that's necessary for us to be able to continue to show up in these resilient and powerful ways in this movement.
Yes, thank you so much for this beautiful picture, for the purple outline, for like watering us with the seeds. So I'm gonna pass it to Marbury to close us out.
Thank y'all so much. It was magical. There was never, ever enough time. But I just want to thank everyone. And I think y'all can see why we're so grateful to be in relationship with these fellows and in fellowship with them. Our folks are changing the way people live their lives and the systems we live inside of every day. And we are so grateful for y'all. So to get more info about the dope fellows who presented today, as well as work more generally at L4BL, check out our website. We will have, as Mika mentioned, a curated list of resources. So if you are trying to do this work, if you are in this work, our fellows have lessons and thoughts about that. And so we'll share that curated list by the end of the week on our website. We will also share a video of this incredible time together. And this is just a sneak peek of the amazing stuff our fellows are doing. We have a brochure that Kim mentioned that really goes into detail about each of our fellows' work, what their vision of a different kind of future is and how to get a hold of them or to support it. And what folks need is your support. And so figure out ways to step in and to support the work. And we want to thank y'all so much. Please come off camera, say hi to your people. I know folks showed up. That was a long 2 hours, but we are changing the world and we are so, so grateful for everybody. So thank y'all so, so much. So give some mad love. Have a good night. Bye, y'all.
Hey.
Bye.
Thank you for coming.
Hey.
I love y'all.
Baby.
Yeah, I miss y'all a lot.
Me too. I miss
We
y'all.
celebrate the baby as a win.
Baby.
That's a new person.
Oh, look
Dang.
The revolution right there.
Boom.
Yeah.
Hey.
Aww.
Such a cute.
Love y'all.
Bye, y'all.
Peace, y'all.
Bye.
Peace. Be well.
Bye.
Give me the baby.
Much love, everybody, right? I'm staying as long as the baby's here.
And Jill's outfit. Jill, you killed it, Jill.
Yes.
Where's
Facts.
Jill?
I mean, Tiffany. I'm sorry.
Tyler, you know what?